Kevin McGee is the Chief Executive of East Lancashire Hospitals Trust, a trust like many others across the country, which is beginning to feel the financial pinch as the government cutbacks continue. The Trust runs 5 hospitals in the area, 3 community hospitals in Accrington, Clitheroe and Pendle, the Burnley General Hospital and the Royal Blackburn Hospital, which has the busiest accident and emergency department in the northwest. I'd like to begin, Kevin, by asking about the ED or emergency department, and the Trust has been criticised in the past for not meeting targets. As the winter months approach and the inevitable winter pressures begin, it's going to put a strain on services. Is there a strong likelihood that targets are going to slip and not be met?
Well, first and foremost, what we have to do is make sure that all patients are treated who come in through our urgent care or emergency departments, and we need to make sure that people are treated safely and securely, and we will always do that, so that the targets are secondary. However, we do also try and treat people within the 4-hour A&E target. Now, last year we just underperformed on the A&E target. We were 94.7%. Incidentally, that was one of the better performers nationally. But still, we didn't hit the 95%. We know now that pressure is going to grow for the winter. We know we're going to get more people needing to access urgent care, emergency care. So we're already planning both as a hospital, but with community services and with our GPs, so that we can try and manage the activity and what's going to happen during the winter. So one of the things we're doing internally within the Trust, we're setting up what we call a new Acute Medical Unit. And that will be a bigger ward base, and it will allow us to treat people who come in through the A&E department, who need more observations, who may not need a full ward stay, but would go on to our AMU to be treated and to have observations undertaken, etc. So we are trying to improve how patients come into the organisation, how they flow through the organisation, how their clinical needs are met. I think one of the big pressures for the winter, though, is going to be staffing. And we know already there's a national shortage of both doctors and nurses. And so one of the big things is, even if we had the ability to open up more beds, we had the physical space, we had the money, we simply can't get hold of staff because they're just not there in the system. So that's going to be a real pressure for everybody as we go forward.
I'd like to stay with staffing, if I may, just for a moment, because the government is obviously pressing for 24-hour treatment of patients, both within primary and secondary care. How is that going to be achievable, let's say, for instance, at the weekends, providing the same level of cover? Surely that's going to put an additional strain on your finances.
People may be interested to know that we are recognised nationally as being one of the hospitals that's probably already more advanced than most in terms of delivering 24/7 cover. So you look at most of our senior doctors and nurses, they already work at weekends, they already work into the evening. So although it will be difficult for us, it won't be as difficult for us as it will be for many trusts and many hospitals. Having said that, clearly there will be more of a pressure, and we're going to have to look and work very closely with our staff to think, how can we manage and use staff in a different way and give them different rotas, give them different job plans, so that we can get that coverage over 24/7. But it will be difficult, absolutely.
Staying with winter pressures, this is, of course, the season of slips, trips and falls. And I was very saddened recently to receive the news that the fracture clinic services have been relocated from Burnley to Blackburn. I have a number of concerns. I suppose the first one being that people in Burnley might struggle to get to Blackburn, certainly over the winter months. And of course, given the fact that the weather is turning, there are going to be more fractures and more breakages. And surely that's going to put a pressure on the services as they are. Can you tell me, first of all, why you took the decision to move those services?
The services for now have only been moved on a temporary basis. Also, put it into perspective, this is one clinic every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. But the problem we had is that it's very difficult to staff the clinic and to provide the service that we need. We don't have the staffing and to meet with the Royal College of Orthopaedic Surgeons requirements around staffing of fracture clinics. Because of that, there was a long wait, which was felt wasn't good for patient safety and patient treatment. So we reluctantly, because we couldn't staff it and continue to staff it in the way that was required, made the decision to temporarily transfer it for 6 months. We're going to review how the service will work in Blackburn, what the pressures will be in Blackburn, whether there's different options to review the clinics in Burnley and whether we can put them back. It is a temporary closure at this stage, but I do have to say it is very, very difficult, and we found it almost impossible to staff the clinic in Burnley safely.
I have to come back to you on that and say that, given the fact, as I said, that we're in sort of coming into the winter months, and ice and snow and all those sorts of things will be on the ground causing trips and fractures, isn't that going to put an additional pressure on the staff that you've already got, even at Blackburn?
It was a clinical decision, and the doctors and the nurses themselves felt it was going to be better to have the services located in one location where we can provide all of the support services. Patients, wherever they were and wherever they come from across East Lancashire, will get a better service by having everything co-located together. So it was clinically felt the service will be better in one location. As I say, we are going to review it. We will look for patient engagement over the coming months about what do we do and what will the service look like going forward. It was a very difficult decision to make, but it was an absolutely clinically led decision. It was the doctors and the nurses themselves that felt this was the right thing to do.
So following on from what you've just said about patient engagement, why then was there not any engagement about the decision, temporarily as it might be, to move the services in the first place?
So that's a fair question, and if we've got that wrong, we have to accept that we've got that wrong and learn from that and ensure that doesn't happen in future. But it was something we had to do quickly because it was felt it wasn't safe to continue, and it wasn't good patient experience at the length of time that people were having to wait for the service over in Burnley. So bear in mind, it was one clinic every 2 weeks, so there could be long waits for patients looking to access that clinic, and that was felt to be inappropriate. It was against good clinical guidance. So the pressure mounted upon us from a clinical perspective to make a decision. We had to make a decision quickly to protect patients. If we've got it wrong in terms of engagement, then we know I'll take that on the chin, we'll learn from it, and we'll make sure that doesn't happen again.
Would you say, are you happy with the way that the service is performing at the moment now it has been moved? Are you managing that service?
Yes, certainly, and you know the feedback from the doctors involved is that they are more comfortable from a clinical perspective in terms of the service that they can offer to our communities by the way it's currently running. But we're going to have to continue to evaluate that. No formal decision has yet been taken.
There have been a number of reports in the press, certainly over the last 6 months, which have disturbed me and a number of other patient groups and patients themselves about thefts from the hospital and various sites. What would you say to patients to reassure them?
And if there are any thefts that have happened, that really disturbs me as well. Hospitals should be a place of safety. There's a couple of things to say. Firstly, really to advise patients and their relatives, if you possibly can, don't bring any valuable gear into hospital. If you do bring them in, we will do our best to look after them, to keep them safe, and clearly you can hand them over to sort of nursing staff and ward staff, and we'll receipt them and we'll keep them in safes to keep them safe. But I think first and foremost, if somebody is coming into hospital, please think very carefully about what belongings you need to bring in and want to bring in, and if there's anything of value or sentimental value, my advice would be don't bring it in.
There was a report in the press recently about a gentleman climbing on the hospital roof at Burnley, and this was allegedly a mental health patient. Could you tell me some more about that? What happened?
Yes, certainly. So a mental health patient on Burnley did access one of the roof spaces, and he was on the roof for a number of hours. I mean, it was handled very, very professionally by all of the staff and by the police and the fire brigade, and there was no real damage done and no harm done to either the patient himself or to anybody else. What I would say though is that though we don't manage mental health services, so although we have mental health services on both the Burnley site and the Blackburn site, those services are run and managed through Lancashire Care Foundation Trust. and we work very closely with Lancashire Care Foundation Trust, but we are not a mental health provider. So if there are any issues in terms of the service, mental health services, they need to be directed towards Lancashire Care Foundation Trust.
Inspection time. The CQC are due to come in and inspect some of the services here at the Royal Blackburn, and of course it's not very long ago that we came out of special measures. How are you preparing yourself and the staff for that?
So we've cottoned this phrase, keep calm and shine on. So we're not doing anything like a big show or anything, because this is actually our business. We are making improvements. We still don't get everything right, and there's a lot of things that we need to improve upon. But the vast majority of the services that we provide are of a really, really high quality. So what we're saying is that to the CQC, well, come in and see what we do. We think we provide really good, high quality services to all of our population. Come in and review us and look at what we do on a day-to-day basis. So clearly, some staff will be nervous, and we're working with staff to get them in a good place. But it really is about showcasing what we do and the improvements that we've made. And I think we've got a really, really good story to tell, and we should all be proud of the services in East Lancashire, and I'm certainly proud of the staff. Our staff are some of the best you'll get anywhere.
Would you say that staff morale has improved over the last 12 months?
I would hope so. I mean, that's always difficult for me in my position to say, because it's really, that has to come from staff themselves. But if you look at our staff satisfaction survey, you look at the staff, friends and family test, they're really positive. I think there's a good vibe around the organisation. We need to continue that. We need to continue improving services, and staff should be really proud and want to showcase the great work that they do to the CQC.
You touched upon things improving, and one of the things that I think would be fair to mention is the fact that your complaints seem to have fallen as well. Is that something that you're very pleased about?
Yes, we are, but we're not complacent about that. So every complaint that comes in, I read and we do a full investigation.
Everyone
that comes in, we do a full investigation, and I read and I sign every complaint letter so that we understand and we have a real grip on what's going on. Because if we've got something wrong, we need to learn from it. We also need to learn from the good stuff as well. So complaints are falling, but I don't think we can ever be complacent about that. I know there are still things in this organisation that we need to improve upon, and we will be relentless and ruthless in terms of trying to drive out and make sure we have the best practice possible.
There are a number of improvements that you're making across the sites, and you seem to be investing money, even though money's very tight. One of the things that caught my eye recently in the press is the fact that you're trying to get a new chemo unit for Burnley, but there's quite a lot of fundraising around that. I wouldn't for 1 minute expect you to comment on the fact that we're having to use fundraising techniques to get this money, but it's certainly good news for the chemo unit at Burnley.
It is, and bear in mind the NHS has always fundraised, and we've always used funds to develop services. I mean, it is a great. I think there's some great stuff going on the Burnley site. So we're looking to fundraise to really upgrade the chemo unit over on the Burnley site. We've got the agreement to go ahead with a £16 million in development of a new standalone, state-of-the-art, it's going to be one of the best in the country, ophthalmic unit. So there's some great developments going on the Burnley site. You also link that with the £1.5 million investment we've done recently in the new robot for urology surgery on the Blackburn site. You can see we are really, in spite of the difficult financial position, we're really investing heavily in clinical services across East Lancashire. And our communities deserve the best services possible, and we will deliver that for them.
We are talking about investment, but there is obviously no doubt whatsoever in anyone's mind that the government funding has been cut year on year and continues to be cut. How concerned are you about the future and your ability to continue to deliver high-class, high-quality services? I
would hope that we can always deliver very, very high-quality services. I think what we're going to have to do is look at what those services are and what the range of those services and what they look like. I don't know what that will mean going forward. I think across the public sector, so be it health, be it local government, we need to come together and pool our resources and think, how can we use this money better for the people that we serve? We know there's going to be pressure on the NHS and its budgets. There's increasing demand on our services. People's expectations are growing drug costs are growing, people are living longer, so there's always going to be pressure on finances within the NHS. We've got to have, as a community and as a society, we've got to have a big debate about, well, what does it look like for the future? Are there things that we can afford and we absolutely have to keep within the NHS? Are there other things that actually we just can't afford to do going forward? I don't know what that looks like. I genuinely don't know what that looks like yet, but what I'm sure about is we've got to have those conversations.
Tell me about staffing and what you're doing, what you're trying to do to bump those numbers up. Let's remind people, of course, that it's not just a problem across East Lancashire. This is a problem across the whole of the National Health Service across the country. What are you doing effectively to attract staff to East Lancs Hospital Trust? I
think that's a really important question. So lots of work going on. So if you look at nursing, one of the big initiatives that we've done is in the summer, a team went out to the Philippines to attract new Filipino nurses. I think in total we offered something like 90 posts, and those nurses will be starting to join us from April next year onwards. So that's really, really good news. We're also working to look at, I suppose, make jobs more attractive and allow people to do different things. So the likes of physiotherapists, pharmacists, get them more involved in the work that happens on the wards, so that it's not all about sort of doctors and nurses. So we're looking to do that. And I think things like the inspection are really important, and this is where they are important, because people are attracted to a hospital and into a system that's got good news. So if we can get a good inspection, if people can say, actually, East Lancs hospitals are going somewhere, I want to be part of that, I want to work there, it helps us to attract the top doctors and nurses for the future. So I think it's really important that we invest in our staff, we have good staff morale, and things such as inspections allow us to attract the best staff possible. You
have sort of cause for jubilation, really. Things have improved, certainly, from what I've seen over the last 12 months. And I think certainly the vibe out on the wards and out in the community is that things continue to improve at the Trust, which is good news. How difficult has it been for you over the last 12 months, you've been here almost a year, to continue to positively move forward?
This sounds really trite, but it's not meant to be. I just think it's a massive privilege and honour to be the chief exec of a hospital of this size and to serve our communities. Don't get me wrong, the job is tough and the hours are really long and there's lots of pressure and scrutiny externally. But it is I love every day of the job. It is a real privilege and it's an honour, and I will do it as long as I possibly can.